much debt did you pay off? What made you change your mind about Ramsey? Do you think living debt-free is sustainable? Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jenna Justman if you are new here, and today I will be doing a Q&A about paying off debt, money, budgeting, all of that good stuff. So I actually announced on my Instagram that my husband and I just became 100% debt-free as of November, I want to say 27th. I'll definitely have to catalog that date. So no credit cards, no student loans, no car loans, and we rent right now, so we don't have a mortgage either. So when I announced that on my Instagram, I actually put up a question box on my Instagram stories in regards to money, budgeting, and finances. So I'm gonna go ahead and answer those questions in this video, and I'm pretty excited because there's some pretty good ones in here. All right, so question number one jumps right into it. It's how much debt did you pay off? So when we first got married, I actually didn't tally how much debt that we had jointly at first, because I had kept a separate budget, thorough budget for myself for a little while. So I was just I was aware of what kind of debt he had, but money-wise, I didn't write it down anywhere what the number was. So me estimating how much debt that we had when we were first married is probably in the realm of $65,000. So like credit cards, student loans, car loans, all of those totaled about $65,000 because I had just graduated college and just bought a car. So mine was definitely the bigger portion of that. But both of us hated debt and we didn't want to be in debt. So we kind of we're paying off debt unofficially, not using the debt Snowball or anything Ramsey related. We are not much of a strategy at all, but we would just try to throw extra money to debt anyways. So between getting married and between March of 2020, we had decreased our debt by around $13,000. So we had, or actually like $11,000, because as of March 2020, when we officially decided to do the debt Snowball, we had $54,000 in debt. So that really just shows you, because in 20 months we were able to knock out $54,000 when we were doing the debt Snowball, versus just kind of not liking debt, wanting to get out of it. The progress that's able to be made when you truly decide to pay it off is astronomical. The second question was, what made you change your mind about Ramsey? Now, when I posted that we became debt-free, I also posted on my stories this picture of my dad and I. My dad was trying to show me Total Money Makeover back in, I think the photos from 2017, it might even be earlier than that, but from at least 2017, because that's when the photo is dated on my phone. My mom just took the picture as a joke and she had it buried in her archives and somehow remembered it. So she pulled it out, she showed the photo to me, and I thought it was hilarious because I was so skeptical. It was just one of those things where it's like, okay, Dad, you're sharing, like, cool book. I was convinced that I had to take out student loans in order to go through school, so I was like, I don't have a choice but to do this. So I just felt that there was no other way, so I wasn't really interested in the whole Ramsey thing because I just thought it was unrealistic for my circumstances and my life. So at the time, I was not interested. What made me change my mind about Ramsey was honestly just reading Total Money Makeover. I already hated debt, and I know I wanted to do things unconventionally. I knew that the world was doing something that wasn't working. The average person always says and feels as though they are broke. And with the United States being such a rich country, I just had to think, why does everyone think that they are and feel as though they're broke when the United States itself is such a rich country? And so I just, had these questions, had these thoughts and feelings, and then my husband and I were just put in kind of a financially vulnerable position. It wasn't necessarily anything devastating. We just really wanted to tackle it, and I was just sick of it. I just got fed up with having debt. I was like, I don't want to be talking about paying off debt and not being in debt for years. I want to accomplish it. And so I just had set my mind to it, and I actually read the book. So that's what changed my mind about it. I would, if you are a skeptic, just read the book with an open mind and then make an informed decision after you've read it. Question number 3 is, do you think living debt-free is sustainable? Now, this was actually my reason for being skeptical in the beginning, is I did not think that it was sustainable. And this question is probably asked out of the heart of, well, how are you supposed to go to school without getting student loans? How are you supposed to get a car without getting a car loan? How are you supposed to get a house without getting a mortgage? It is very true that, if I wanted to put myself through college in a debt-free way, I would have had to make different choices based on my circumstances at the time. It still would have been possible, but I would have had to make different choices. So is it sustainable? Yes. Does it involve sacrifices and changing your mindset around things? Yes. Question number 4 is, did your wedding contribute to the debt at all? And thankfully, in our case, it did not. But with weddings and paying weddings, if you've gone through the whole wedding planning process and paid for your own wedding, we did have some sources of help from family members that were incredibly a big blessing for us. But for the majority of it, we did cover our own costs. And the thing with wedding expenses is most companies or vendors, they will charge the first payment upfront or by, halfway to your wedding date, and then they will charge the second payment on or right before your wedding date. I just paused all other debt payments at that time, which was a little bit discouraging for me because I was making some progress on my personal student loans before getting married, but we decided to went ahead and cash flowed our wedding. But it made it very difficult to kind of budget because you have to do the first payment up front and then the second payment right before your wedding. So right before your wedding, you're like owing the videographer, the photographer, the venue, the flowers. You're owing so much right before the actual date. But 100%, we were able to do it and cash flow our wedding. We did not get in debt at all for the wedding, and also for our honeymoon as well, we were able to do that. All of the payments, because they were due right before the wedding, it kind of drained my savings, and so when we went on the honeymoon, we had $0 to our name. Thankfully, the big expenses for the honeymoon were all paid for. Our flight, we went on a cruise in the Mediterranean, so the cruise was fully paid for, which included all of our food. But if we wanted, any food on all the stops, which, in Spain, Italy, and France, we wanted food in the stops. If we wanted anything else, it came out of our own pockets. And so that's where we got into a bit of credit card debt afterwards. But it wasn't an exorbitant amount. It was a pretty doable amount. Both Paul and I have been pretty good about maintaining our credit cards, but credit cards really are a trap. You'll have to read Total Money Makeover to really understand how much of a trap they are. Question number 5 is, do you and your husband have separate or combined bank accounts? We right now have a combined bank account, but we got married with separate bank accounts. So we did receive advice before the wedding, or I received advice before the wedding that I actually did take to heart, that said that we would fight about money less if we did not combine bank accounts. Now that actually, the thing that kept it so that we had separate bank accounts for 2 years plus a little, like 2.5 years, is that we honestly didn't really fight about money. And when we combined them, that's almost what became more difficult, because we had our separate finances. We didn't see what each other were spending. We weren't on top of that. We weren't really looking into that. We were budgeting together, and so we would upload our numbers in the same budget together. So we were somewhat, aware in the periphery what each other were doing, taking in and bringing out. But we just kind of split bills, split expenses. So it was a lot of communication back and forth, but we didn't really fight about money. And, ironically, when we combined bank accounts, that's actually where things started getting overwhelming, because more things started withdrawing, like twice the amount of bills started withdrawing from the same account. So for me, it was much harder to keep track of mentally where everything and what dates everything was coming out in. So it was a bit overwhelming to combine bank accounts all at once. But the thing is that it does transform the way you think. Instead of thinking of each other as individuals, you're thinking of each other now as a unit and as a team, which is what marriage is supposed to be. So even though it might be more of a challenge to combine bank accounts, because we honestly didn't fight at all when they were separate, but it might be more of a challenge to combine them, but it increases your communication, your awareness of your finances, and your idea and image of you working as a team together towards a common goal. So 100% I would recommend combining them, but we waited about 2.5 years. Question number 6 is, what was the most revealing category of spending when you started budgeting? Now, this is a great question. My initial thought was maybe just eating out and food, but that's pretty typical, because the one that was actually truly shocking to me personally, I think to Paul as well, is we broke down all of our subscriptions. and what we were paying in our subscriptions. And that was really eye-opening because of how inefficient we were being. Like, there were so many accounts. Like, we both had separate Spotify accounts. We could combine them for a lesser rate. We were both watching and had different streaming accounts, like, Hulu, Netflix, Disney Plus, where we could actually get on our family's accounts and just, cut down on the subscription. So we actually cut our subscriptions, our monthly subscriptions, down by half when we started budgeting, just by being aware of what was actually going in and coming out every month and how inefficient we were being with them. We just really, had to weigh what are we using multiple times a week that's going to justify this subscription. So we chopped it down in half. So that was definitely the most revealing category for us, because I was not aware of how much and how inefficient we were being just with these tiny subscriptions that add up to hundreds of dollars. Question number 7 is, do you use any program to budget? And yes, actually, we just started using this program. We decided to pull the trigger on the paid every dollar app for Dave Ramsey, and there is a free app available. The paid version just allows you to link it with your bank account, whereas the free version, you just upload it, yourself by hand. But we decided to go ahead and do the Ramsey Plus version so that it would link to our bank account and just have the transactions in there, which we could then put into different categories. So we've been using the Every Dollar app for only, I want to say we're on month 3. We might be on month 4, but I would highly recommend it. Definitely the free version if you're working on getting out of debt. Maybe if you're at the tail end of debt or something, it's worth it to do the Ramsey Plus version. Question number 8 is, what's some advice you would give to someone just starting on their debt-free journey? So number 1 advice is to budget. You have to budget in order to get debt-free. And this kind of relates to the next question, which is, would the Money Makeover, the book, as in the Total Money Makeover book, help if you're currently spending more than what you're taking in? So it actually specifically talks about this loop. You get stuck in it, especially if there is debt or if there's, life circumstances that make it so that you're spending more than you're taking in. But what you're doing is you're just digging yourself into a hole by doing that. And so the book actually specifically talks about those cases. You have to free yourself up from the payments that you're getting. And so by paying off debts, the debt snowball works by listing all of your debts, smallest to largest, and paying those off one at a time, starting at the smallest one. By paying that off, you then free up the money from that payment, and you apply that payment plus whatever extra you might have to the next one. And so you're able to gain momentum in that way. If you cannot even have the momentum to pay off that first initial debt, then it honestly means that you're probably living above your means. And so whether that means, the bills are too high, your rent's too high, you have to downsize from a home to an apartment, but something has to give. It is not sustainable to be spending more than what you're taking in, especially for a long period of time. If you right now are watching this and you're in that situation and you're thinking, how do I get out of this hole? But something does have to give, and whether that is reducing your bills or increasing your income, one or the other is going to have to happen. And then applying the debt snowball is the best thing that you can do in order to decrease your payments, because the greatest wealth building tool that anyone has is their income. If that income is all tied up in payments, going towards creditors, collecting interest, then you are not using your most powerful wealth building tool effectively. And eventually you're gonna have to get out of that hole. And maybe the very first thing you do is to read the Total Money Makeover, or to hear likewise, stories of people who've gotten out of it, just to encourage you that you can do it. But it just takes budgeting and it takes attention every single day in order to be able to be totally free, which is what you deserve. You deserve that financial freedom. So those are all the questions that I'm going to answer today from the Q&A, but there was actually this quote that I wanted to end on that was really powerful to me that I actually heard in this morning's commute. It was from the Christy Wright podcast, which is part of the Dave Ramsey network. And she says something that was really cool in today's episode. Debt does not represent opportunity. It represents coming from behind for the rest of your life. So this was what really irked me, and what really made me decide to make a big life change is I didn't want to be singing the same song about wanting to get out of debt and never doing it. I was sick of it. I didn't like the pattern. I don't like to, be trapped in that same rat race. but you really have to get to the point where you're, you know, personally and honestly sick of it. And you will, as long as you have debt, you're coming from behind, you're in the negative. And that's just the reality of things. And you don't deserve that. You deserve freedom. You deserve to free up your monthly income so that you can use that as a tool to then build wealth for yourself and for generations to come. So I hope that this video was encouraging for you, and I would love to hear what your personal experience is with it, whether you're currently starting your debt-free journey, whether you're just kind of exploring, whether you totally disagree with being debt-free and you think debt is great. I would love to hear, you know, different perspectives, just different opinions. I love to spark dialogue around certain issues, but feel encouraged if you've just started your debt-free journey, or if you're in the middle of it, or even if you've, you know, reached the end of it and you're almost there, you can absolutely do it. It just takes time and dedication. If you've fallen off the wagon, you can get back on again. This is your sign right now to get back on the wagon. And I believe in you. I know that you can do it. And the weight that's been lifted off my shoulders and my husband's and I's shoulders is so significant. So thank you so much for watching this video. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I cannot wait to catch you on the next one.